how it is, see, to be close. Okay. Jennifer Riggs is a certified hypnotherapist, mindset coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about helping people release their negative emotions to discover their true selves and lead a happier life. She has been working with clients in a healing capacity for over a decade and strives to share the wisdom and understanding of self and others that this work has and continues to teach her. She has written a book called Free from the Cage about emotional healing and how to find the path to mindset changes. Take it over again.
Thanks for being here, everybody. I'm not really used to a microphone, so we're going to see how this goes. I'm kind of a walk-around kind of person. So anyway, thanks so much for being here. Again, I am a mindset coach and hypnotherapist, and what that means is I help people look at their past experiences and process the emotions that have happened there and change their mindset and the way they think about what they're doing now and what they want in their future. So today we are going to talk about the topic of limiting beliefs, which is exactly what it says. You have some kind of belief that is somehow limiting you in your life. It is stopping you from being who you really truly want to be or who you feel the potential to be. So the first thing I want to do though is I just want to tell you a little story, and it's going to give you an idea of how we get these limiting beliefs. In 1994, I was a junior in college at Penn State, and my stepsister was going to be graduating from high school that day. And I decided that before I went to go to her graduation, I was going to go to my job, which I worked at a bakery on campus, which was an awesome job because my roommates loved me because I brought all the cookies home every day. But I decided I was going to go to my job, and then I was going to get on the road. But I realized that I was low on gas. So as I was going to go to my job, I turned around and went back out in town, went to the red light, which was flashing. At that flashing red light, something significant happened that changed the way I thought about things for at least 10 years. I stopped, I looked both ways. I didn't see anyone coming, and there were a bunch of bushes that were obstructing the view a little, so I edged out just a little more and I didn't see anyone, so I felt confident to pull out. As soon as I took my foot off the brake, I felt the impact. A full-size Ford pickup hit the front of my car, and I watched it go out of control down the road. As it happened, something happened in my body, and if you've ever had a traumatic experience, this is probably going to resonate with you. In that moment, I felt like everything inside my body just literally went to my feet. Like, I just felt this complete rush through my body. Has anybody ever felt that feeling? Like when something scares you, terrifies you. And I've felt that a few other times in my life, and all of those events have created a belief for me later. And that's a significant thing, which I want you to recognize that, because whatever's happening to you emotionally is also happening to you physically. So in that moment, I felt everything rush out of my body. I saw the truck. The thought in my mind actually was not that I was in an accident, that I was almost in an accident. I didn't actually believe it happened. I'm watching this truck going, and it finally stops down the road. The first thing I do is get out of my car. I didn't look at my car. I didn't assess how I was. I just ran down the road to see how he was. He's getting out of his truck. He's late 60s. I run over and I say, "Sir, are you okay?" And he started screaming at me, "You are so stupid. How are you so stupid? Look what you did to my truck." He hit me. But I believed that I was wrong. And it scared me so bad that I didn't know what to do. I'm maybe 20 years old. Never been in an accident. I never even thought an accident could happen to me. I actually used to love driving prior to this. I would drive all my friends everywhere. It never occurred to me that anything could happen. I was the one that was like, "Yeah, I'll drive us here." I even would joke, like, "I want to be a race car driver. I just liked driving." Not that I was speeding all the time. My mom's here, so. But I actually really love driving, and that changed for me in that moment so significantly. When I got back to my car, the police had arrived. I never spoke to the man again, but they were very concerned. They're like, are you okay? Because there are pieces of your car so far down the road where we are shocked that you're even standing here. I was completely uninjured, I thought. I actually had severe whiplash, which in the time I felt like, because of the shock, I was like, I'm okay. And I didn't do anything about it. And then about a year later, I started having headaches every day and migraines, and I couldn't turn my head anymore. This went on for literally a decade, just severe pain. And it came from this impact. However, it wasn't just the impact of the vehicle, it was the emotional impact. Because I became terrified to drive. I didn't drive anywhere. I was basically dependent on anyone to get me places. The first year I was married, fortunately my husband at the time and I worked in the same building, so he drove, and we had moved to Washington, D.C. So I was in a place, I had lived in a very small town and moved to a place with lots of traffic, 6 lanes, and it's crazy. And I was terrified that if I got in a car again, that I would have an accident. I also believed that I was a terrible driver, that I made bad decisions. It impacted me in so many ways. That's a limiting belief. And those things happen to us in our life through these traumatic events. However, they also come through other ways too. First of all, when you are born, from the age of 0 to about 7, that's when you're forming all of your kind of ideas about yourself and the world around you. And the things that you observe in your family of origin and from friends and teachers and just anyone who is like an authority figure to you, you're gonna start absorbing that. The problem is they don't necessarily have a clear way of doing things either. So they have negative limiting beliefs. You also will pick those up because you'll believe, well, this is the way it is for our family. This is the way we do things. We can have limiting beliefs around relationships, around our careers and dreams, around money. That's a huge one. People will have beliefs that say, money is hard to make, we don't make a lot of money. We'll say these negative statements, and we will continue to believe that as long as we have that belief kind of stuck to us. It literally sticks to us like glue until we do something to actively change it. So in the time when you're growing up, if you experience with your family, say if your parents believe that we always do things a certain way, but it feels really wrong to you, you might start doing it that way until you get to a place where you're really uncomfortable, and it can come out in a physical way as well. So all those things, that's the reason I wanted to really explain the experience with my body, was because what you feel in your body is related to what you're doing emotionally and what you're feeling emotionally. I'll grab my water. Thanks, guys. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So any phrase that you say to yourself that starts with, I'm not, I can't, I don't have, it's always been that way, those are limiting beliefs. So think about that for a minute. If you have any things that you're saying to yourself regularly that start with any of those words, you're going to be experiencing a limiting belief. I have passed out packets of information, but I think I might have been short because a lot more people than I thought were coming, and I'm very grateful. So I will be able to send that to you all at the end. If we'll work that out, and I'll make sure you all get it. But there's a list of limiting beliefs in there, and since everyone doesn't have it, I'm going to just go through some of them just quickly so you can get an idea if you have any of these particular beliefs. This is a really huge one. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of being loved. Bad things always happen to me. Does anybody have that sense ever? Like, bad things always happen to me. Because also when we start believing something like that, it actually starts manifesting for us, because we start creating the scenarios where those things will happen over and over to us. I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not talented enough. If you ever say any of those things to yourself, that's a limiting belief. The good thing is, these things can be changed. You are not stuck with this. You're only stuck with it as long as you decide to be stuck with it. People won't like the real me. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough resources to pursue my dreams. I don't fit in. I can't catch a break. People will always hurt me. I'll be judged. I don't like my body. That's a limiting belief when we start criticizing what we look like, what our physical attributes are. I'll never measure up. Life is hard. That's just how it is. There's too much competition. I have no choice. Anybody ever say that? I think even when they were talking this morning about the domestic violence and what people go through, what women go through, a lot of times they're stuck in that loop too, where they believe they have no choice. We always have a choice. Sometimes the choices are just challenging, right? I'll never make any money. I just have bad luck. Getting my hopes up always leads to disappointment. I can't trust myself. Success should come easy. And again, any phrase that's I'm not, I don't have enough, and it's always been this way. Those phrases. Would everybody in this room say that you might have at least one? Okay. Yeah. It's normal because again, we're having situations where we have a traumatic event happen, like with my car accident, or we've learned this from our family of origin. There's another thing too though that creates these, and those are labels. Sometimes they're labels we give ourselves, and sometimes they're labels that other people give us. Sometimes they're even well-intentioned, and they end up hurting us. Some of the well-intentioned ones are things like, you're the smartest person I know, or your house is always so clean, you're the perfect housekeeper, or like, you're the best athlete. You know, anything that actually, if someone is repeatedly saying that to you, then they might actually be creating a mindset for you that says, I always have to be that way or else they're not going to care about me anymore. So that's a limiting belief as well. So when we give ourselves labels, or when others give us labels, that is a way that we create a negative limiting belief. Some of the labels are things that go back to those phrases from the beginning where I was talking, where you say, you know, I'm not smart, or it's more of you'd say I'm stupid, or I'm bad, or I'm ugly, whatever. So that's a label that we're putting on ourselves. Whenever we say something negative about ourselves, we're sticking a label to us. And even if no one else can actually see it, they actually will see it, because you will put it out. You'll put it out through your actions and through your emotions, and you'll show them that label that you're wearing. So the good news is these things can change. And the way we can change them, we have to do 4 steps to change them. First of all, we have to recognize that we have the belief. And everybody raised their hand, so I know everybody has one. So I'm gonna just challenge everyone for a minute to just think of a negative limiting belief that you have about yourself. Just kind of get that in your head. You don't have to share it out loud or anything, but I just want you to think about it. I'm gonna tell you the steps to start to shift that. And we can have them in one or more areas of our life as well. So again, like with the money thing, that one's so big. Some people might not have a limiting belief around money, but they might have one around relationships. So you might see them like, they're so successful, but then they're really not happy because their relationships are not, you know, going well, but they don't have the belief that money's hard to come by. Someone else might have a great relationship, but believe they can't get any money. You know, and the great thing is, if you want to have all of it, you can. You just have to start figuring out the way to recognize it and shift that. So if you have one in your mind, just think about that, and later on, if you want to go back through the packet, you can fill out and write down all of the ones you can think of about yourself that you have, and start deciding which ones you want to think about or think about changing. So those steps, the first thing we're gonna do is challenge that belief. So we can't change something unless we acknowledge that it's there. So we're gonna challenge it, we're gonna bring it up, we're gonna look at it, and we're gonna kind of figure out, where's that coming from? Is that coming from a traumatic experience? Did I have something happen? Is it coming from my parents? Did I pick that up from them or from one of my siblings or friends at school when I was growing up? Where did I get this idea? Am I wearing a label? You know, where's this coming from? So we want to really start analyzing it. We have to get curious about things. If we want to resolve anything, we have to have some curiosity about it and try and recognize, you know, this is not just something I have to stay with. It's not something that's always with me. So after we challenge that belief, then we're going to question it. We have to question it because, as crazy as it sounds, we're actually getting a benefit from keeping that negative limiting belief. There's always something that we are benefiting from by having that, because it's usually protection. If you've been hurt, so even using my accident, if I don't get back behind the wheel, I'm not having another one, right? But I can't go to the mall. I literally was like, if I wanted to get my hair cut, I had to get my husband to take me. It was terrible. I went from being so independent to being so dependent, and I let that go for so long. So just thinking about, is there something you're doing in your life where you're repeating that cycle over and over, and just saying, I accept this now. I accept the label. I accept this belief. Do I want to change it? Do I want to take the label off? So we're going to question, what's my benefit in this? Am I staying safe in it? Am I getting some kind of attention from having it? Because sometimes that happens too, and we aren't consciously doing that. Subconsciously, negative attention can be something we seek as well, even if it's like, why would you want negative attention? It's still attention, right? So there's some benefit from it, and we have to analyze, is this something that we really truly want for ourselves, this attention in that negative way? The next thing we're going to do is create a superior alternative, so a better outcome. If you look at the situation, using my accident again, I look at the situation, the alternative to being completely dependent on other people to drive me places was to face my fear and get behind the wheel again. That meant I might have some freedom. Did that freedom appeal to me more than protecting my fear of having another accident? Eventually it did. It took me a long time. I'm being totally honest here, because it's not easy to really analyze. I truly believed, like to my core, that I was a terrible driver and I couldn't ever drive safely again. So once we create this alternative, do I want the freedom? Do I want to feel better? Do I want to earn more money? Do I want to have the career I want? Do I want a healthy relationship? What do I truly want? Start seeing that alternative. What's that look like for you? You know, even maybe writing it down. Write down all of the benefits you will have from changing this belief. And is the benefit more than staying stuck and scared and, wearing your label? Once we've created the alternatives, then we have to test them. And this is the scary part, right? We don't want to test them, because what are we afraid of? We're afraid that we'll fail again, or that we'll have the same outcome. I'll have another accident. That's what we're afraid of. So once you've decided you're going to test it, you test it and then you see what happened. If something happens and you're still like, That didn't feel a whole lot better. You have to remember that sometimes it's gonna take more than one try to get there. We can't just expect that the next time I get in the car, I'm gonna drive across the country. That didn't happen. I went a little further. I tried a little bit more until I felt comfortable again. And that actually happened by necessity. I honestly, sometimes it's that way. It's not like we decide it. Sometimes it's decided for us. My husband got a different job. So either I had to get a different job or I had to get comfortable driving. So I was pushed into it, which can be a good thing. Being pushed isn't terrible. Sometimes we need that little nudge, but it was really like, do I lose my independence totally or do I make a change? So after you test that and you test it again, and you start to get comfortable, it will get easier. And you will break that belief. It will change for you. You are not stuck anywhere. You are not stuck in anything that you do not want to be in. There's another piece that goes with this, and that will come in emotional processing. And that's the other thing I'm really big on. I talk about it all the time. I talk about emotional processing and why it's so important. So when I had the accident, I had some emotions with that. I had fear, a lot of fear. I had kind of a sense of not having faith in myself anymore. I didn't trust myself. So those things all have emotions with them, and we have to acknowledge those as well. It's not enough to just say, okay, I do this, now I'm going to do this. There are pieces in between. Sometimes they're not fun, usually they're not, but it's healable. Anything that we want to heal is truly healable. We just have to start getting curious about it and start figuring out what is it that I need to process, that I need to go through, that I need to feel differently about in this. And the emotional processing can happen in lots of different ways. So you can do it on your own by, questioning those emotions and saying, what do I need to feel differently? How can I feel safer about this? You can go to a therapist, you can, talk with a friend, sometimes even just talking about it, saying something out loud, journaling, whatever you can do to start getting those emotions out. This event has made me feel, and write that down. And write down everything until it's an exhaustive list. You have everything that you've felt about, because sometimes an event will not just have one thing that we need to address. I always call it like sweeping out the corners. If we get the big thing out of the middle of the room, is there still something, sometimes I clean my house, I don't have time to do it all, so I'll just go down the middle, right? And that doesn't work, because there's still stuff over in the corners. Same thing with emotions. So if you get the obvious things out, you need to pay attention to what's still left over here that maybe I'm not seeing in my limited vision right here in front of me. And the reason that's critical is if you start testing your alternative and you still feel a little unsure about the change, it's probably because there's something in the corners. There's some emotion there. There's something that you haven't addressed, some piece of fear about it. So recognizing all of those things that we need to do to make the change. Just want to kind of get a little feel for what everybody thinks about this. Do you feel like you have a limiting belief that you think you can change? Everybody have one they think they can change? Is it something you've recognized for a long time, or is it like all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I think I can change this? Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions at all?
I may have one. You mentioned recognizing the limiting belief and knowing what to do. Sometimes for some people, we do know what we need to do, but it takes us so long to take the action needed.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
Well, okay, so like in my case, I knew that I needed to do something because my world was getting really small. I got really comfortable in it. So our subconscious mind actually is super lazy. It likes to do what it knows. So it knows that you are comfortable with whatever awful thing you keep thinking about yourself or you keep living out. And it will let you stay there until you recognize it. So that curiosity about it, why am I doing it? I think that that is the key really to pushing to get the change. You know, in my situation, I had someone actually physically like, yeah, you're gonna either do it or you're gonna get a new job. And it's gonna have to be walking probably. I don't want to do that. I love to walk, but, no, so the getting curious about it is what is going to start pushing you. So yes, I know, and I personally will do this often, like I might have something going on that's stressing me out and I know what to do, but sometimes we just stay sitting in it because that lazy subconscious mind that just wants to stay comfortable, because we want to stay comfortable, but we're not comfortable at all, right? It's fake comfort. It's like, you know, you go out and fall and hurt yourself and you're like, well, that really hurt, but at least I didn't like fall off the edge here and really hurt myself. But yeah, no, you will, because you're gonna keep falling in that same way over and over again, and it's gonna create the same hurt. You can either do it right now or you can wait and drag it out forever. So I think the push really just comes in getting curious. That's the key, really. Start asking yourself, you know, why am I staying in this? Because I'm comfortable. What's my benefit? That number 2 step, the questioning, is really the thing that's going to get you really ready to change. Because we can recognize it. That's the first step. We've got to recognize the belief, but just recognizing it isn't enough. You know, I can see if I'm doing something that's negatively affecting me, but if I were to just sit there and look at it, it's not going to change it. It's when I go, why am I doing it? What's my benefit in it? And that's when I'm going to start to feel I can press on and change that. That's a good question. Thank you. Anybody else have a question?
You mentioned, I think it was 0 to age 7,
Yeah.
right? Where kids start to develop or create those negative beliefs in their minds. What advice do you have for parents or, you know, of young kids of that age bracket to help them not start to form, for those kids not to form those kinds of negative beliefs?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So I think the reason that this happens is because as parents, maybe we're not aware,
Yeah.
right? So having that, you're already on the road to it just by having the awareness. So
Yeah.
I think asking children how they feel about things and asking how they feel about themselves regularly is really important, because you're gonna get those answers and go, you know, if they tell you something and you're like, well, that's not true, so let's talk about why you feel that way, you know, what is it that's making you feel not smart enough or not good enough? So I think having those conversations is a really great thing for us to be doing. You know, and if something happens and your kids get a negative belief, honestly, it's gonna happen, no matter what you do.
I mean, I guess there's no way to control it.
There isn't.
It's giving them
You
the
could be-
tools and resources to like
Right.
make sure they know how to manage through it. And,
Right,
yeah.
exactly, and actually that is a huge goal I have, is to, and I don't know how I'm gonna do this, so if anybody in this room has any idea how to make this happen, I think this will change the world. I really do believe this. I believe that we need to have emotional processing in every school,
Yeah.
everywhere, as part of the curriculum, from kindergarten forever, every year.
Yeah.
It's important as health class, as math class, as science, as, you know, English, whatever. Emotional processing needs to be part of our curriculum. It is something that I think is so critical. So if anybody has any ideas, talk to me later, because it's a seed for me right now. But
Well, and they do it successfully in other countries.
yeah.
I've seen, you know, so how can we do that here?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge, but I think it really it'll stop all of the negative feelings, you know, not all of them, but it's going to stop bullying and, you know, having kids feeling not as good as their peers and everything, because we won't constantly be judging ourselves, where then we're judging everyone else. And that's where the problem really comes in schools, is because kids really don't have those tools. Because we don't, you know, think about it as adults here. I know that I personally didn't have emotional processing tools because my parents didn't, because their parents didn't, because their parents didn't. It's not a criticism on anyone. It's the reality. we don't know what to do with them because we think, oh, we just need to keep on going, you know, something negative happens and we just pretend it didn't happen and we just go on, but it affected us. Just like physically, I had that response. For 10 years, I had severe pain from that, and it's gone. I have zero neck problems. I can move my neck all around. I don't ever have migraines. I can't even remember the last time I really had a headache. I don't have that problem because I faced whatever it was that created that for me. And that's another thing I talk about a lot too, and I really believe that our emotions and our physical health are so in alignment. We need to have them in alignment. We need to not have them as separate things. We are not separate from our emotions. We are part of them in our physical body. It's like the light on the dashboard. When you have a physical problem, it's because most likely there's something emotional. I'm not saying we don't have medical things. I'm never gonna tell people that, you know, you don't need to go to the doctor. I don't believe that. I believe that it's a complementary thing. We need to look at our emotions just as much as we need to look at the physical health. Question?
Probably a question, or maybe just to add on to, my kids are 6 and 8 now, and I became aware of, well, I didn't get much emotional processing growing up. And for my kid, one thing that I realized once I became aware of the effect of really not dealing with our emotions and the subconscious and everything you just talked about, limiting belief. For my kid, I remember when my daughter was probably as early as 2 years old, right at bedtime, we will have little affirmation. I am smart. And I have them repeat that as well.
Yes.
Then she's 8, 9, she goes, oh, come on, mommy, we don't need to do that. But at the same time, I realized that when she's having conflict with her friend, and she's feeling a little insecure about certain things, they have this process of, let's take a deep breath, and then let's talk about it. Let's remind ourselves that whatever your friend is saying is not true.
Yeah.
What is true? Tell me. And I'm not perfect, and there are times when also I lose my itch, and then, and then I'm gonna recollect myself as well. But it's more like, maybe if I had that as a child, I would have been able to deal with my emotion a little better and not have all this stomach issue that I had in my late 20s. So hopefully, I'm hoping that if I teach my kid early on the small little step, that I can help them grow as they're growing up. So it's just like this small little affirmation of repeating to themselves, usually at bedtime. Because again, it kind of stores in your subconscious, and then you sleep, and then you just remember all the stuff.
Okay, everybody do what she just said. Start telling your kids, and do it yourselves too. I do believe very firmly in positive affirmations, especially like for kids as they're forming. When we do that as adults, we also have to make sure that we're not just painting over a dirty surface. Because you don't want to just say, you know, I'm good enough and I feel, you know, successful and I am this or I am that. If deep inside in your subconscious you don't actually believe that, it's the same as literally painting over a dirty surface. So like you think about, you're gonna paint your living room and you get a new color, you're not just gonna go and slap the paint on the wall, you're going to go, I need to prime this first, and then I'm gonna paint the color on the wall. So before we use those positive affirmations, we need to check and see, is there something negative behind that first, and work on that and process that feeling and say, you know, why do I feel not good enough? And it probably goes back to some kind of a trauma or, you know, a repeated belief system kind of being ingrained in you as you're forming in your younger years. But doing that as a child, I think that's a fantastic. There's nothing that could be wrong about doing that. Just, you know, you read them a book at night, go ahead and do some affirmations too, and also start doing it yourself.
Sorry, not to jump in, but there's so many books too nowadays for kids that I think do touch on like positive affirmations that like my generation, like I don't think we had as much growing up.
Well, it's definitely more of an awareness now about our emotional health. It definitely is becoming more important, probably because as a society, we are struggling so much. So it has to be important. We're looking for answers. We're looking for ways to change those beliefs that we have about ourselves. So yeah, like with your kids, start reading those books and doing the affirmations. And do the affirmations yourself too, but first ask, why do I feel that way? You know, just, I actually talk about it in a chapter in my book about using, and I'm gonna share with that in a little bit, when we use those positive affirmations, if you, sorry, I just lost I was thinking about the chapter in the book and then I lost the sentence I was on. Okay, rewind. Let me share that first. It's okay, I'm good enough, it's okay. Alright, yeah, my book, Free from the Cage. It talks about emotional processing. It's two parts. The first part of the book is how to process your emotions, going back to our situations and traumas that we've had and the things that we learned growing up. Again, it's not that anyone did anything wrong. It is literally just, this is the way the world works. This is the way the brain works. We're going to pick up those things. So we go back, process those things. The second half of the book is about how to change your mindset. So it does address limiting beliefs. There's a chapter on that, and a lot of other mindset changes that you can make, and things about self-worth and self-love and self-care. And it's broken down into very small parts, so it's really readable. You can, read a chapter so easily. I did it that way on purpose because I have an ADHD brain. So if anybody else has that, it's really designed for that kind of thinking. But the positive affirmations, we want to not be painting over that dirty surface. We want to go ahead and fix the thing first, right? Find the source of that and then shift it. So, does anybody else have a question?
I just have a comment, really, addressing kind of her question about what can parents do. After a session that I actually had with you, I learned that there were things in my youth, like 0 to maybe 5, 7, 10, somewhere in there. I thought I had this idyllic childhood, which I really feel as though I did. My parents did a great job, but there's still things that we don't know how to process, and our brain processes it in a different way, even though no one meant anything negative, no one did anything to abuse or hurt us, but that's the way that I processed it as a child and didn't even realize I was clinging onto. So it was kind of fascinating to me in that session with you that, like, okay, I didn't even know I was holding on to this as a child, but now as an adult, I can go back, fix that, not just paint over it, and realize that had value, and now I can let it go.
Yeah, that's such a great point too, because when we're growing up, like you said, I had this idyllic childhood, it's great. So here, why would I have this negative feeling? Well, sometimes things happen to you with your friends, and you don't tell your parents. They can't help you. You can't, someone can't help you with something they don't know about. So, if anybody here is going, oh, I did something wrong with my kids, no, you didn't, because the problem is because we don't have those tools. The kids might not even know to say, hey, maybe I should talk to mom. She can help me work through this. But it's not taught. It's like we just kind of go about our lives like stuffing everything down because we think that's what we're supposed to do, right? And then you're gonna get that negative belief, and that it's gonna start affecting you, and you're gonna keep carrying that out forever. Do you have a question?
Well, I think, such a great conversation about our children as our next generation. I think a game changer for me too was reading The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown.
Yes, that's
One of the things she taught, because I was also a stepmom, which that's a whole other variable, right? Yeah, that was raised by someone that had no emotional tools, right? And how do you navigate that, right? Especially when they're past that age of 7. And one of the things that it taught me was, rather than trying to protect our kids from feeling the negative thing, we teach them how to be with it by modeling it ourselves. And that's something as women I've noticed, where it's like, hey, I want to help you, right? Record skip this, right? And and I say that with all the love and respect, but recognizing what that looks like. And when I was practicing full time as a chiropractor,
the emotions are still creating that problem. I literally went to a chiropractor 3 times a week for a couple of years, and then maintenance after that for a long, long time, until I healed the emotional problem. And then it literally was like gone. I'm like, I have no pain. Where'd that go? Like I couldn't turn my head, and it just disappeared. So there's proof that if you address the emotion, you're going to make the change. Absolutely.
I would ask, how do you create balance in this next generation as you are, as a parent, wanting to instill these positive affirmations and positive beliefs, in that they are not feeling so entitled and becoming such a narcissist because they feel so positive about themselves.
Yeah.
Like you are a great athlete when really you're not. And you are a
Well, that's the thing. Okay, that's the thing. So we gotta be honest, right? We gotta be honest. No, and that's part of the culture that we've created too, is, you know, praise is a good thing, but we have to do it appropriately. Right? We have to do it appropriately for ourselves too. Like we have to recognize when we make mistakes. We have to recognize that. That's what, we can't always go around going, you know, I joked like I'm good enough when I spill my thing, but like, we have to recognize if we hurt someone or do something wrong, we're not always the best there is out there. We have to have some, you know, feeling of what can I do to better myself? And so we want to instill that in our kids too. So I think that's where some of the balance comes, is making sure that we are also, you know, saying, yes, be truthful in it and say, you know, you're really good at this, but just know that lots of people, you know, you want to make sure that they are aware of others too. We have to always be aware of others too. So I think that's probably a way to find some balance in that. Do you have a question?
I just have a comment too, just something that I heard about in parenting and not creating this, you know, unrealistic ideal of how smart you're supposed to be, rather than telling your child, oh, you're so smart, is to tell them you're such a hard worker. If that's something that you want them, that's something kind of tells them they can improve themselves. My daughter's a perfectionist, and she's brilliant, but if she doesn't get a math problem right immediately,
She's wearing that label.
Yeah.
She's wearing the perfectionist label.
Yeah, so I'm trying to
Yeah.
tell her you're such a hard worker. If that's what she's trying to work for, then she's going to try to
Yes.
work on this problem rather than just thinking, I'm not as smart as everybody thinks.
Yeah, I think it's more like changing the way we say something. So instead of beating ourselves up, and that's another thing, kind of a whole other topic, but we can just zone in on this about just reframing what we're saying. So, you know, instead of berating herself for not getting the best grade, I appreciate my effort, and you saying that too. And so I think pointing that out to her and saying, okay, you put out your best effort. And I always say, just do your best at whatever it is, and your best can change. Your best can change from now to the next 5 minutes. If you suddenly have a headache or whatever, the best you were doing before is not the best that you're gonna be doing now. And you have to have the grace for that. So I think teaching them grace for themselves as well, and, you know, changing that, taking that label off. I'm told that I'm out of time, correct? Yes.
We got 5 more minutes.
Oh, I have 5 minutes? Oh, I thought.
1 more minute now.
Well, I didn't think the sign said smile, I thought it said done, so.
Basically done.
I'll smile, and, so I guess we just have like a minute, so if anybody has any last things, I'm happy to answer, and I'll also be around at the end of the day during the social. I have a table set up outside where you can buy my book if you're interested, I'll sign it for you. And I'll have cards with, you can get to my website, and there's some free downloadables on there. Actually, in the book, there's, at the end of every chapter, there are exercises, and I have a free downloadable that's every exercise in the book. You just don't have the rest of the book in there, and that's free on my website. So you can certainly get that, and I'm happy to answer questions. I do see clients one-on-one. If anybody really needs help with something, you can certainly ask me about that too. Working on a YouTube channel and putting resources out there for, you know, quick tips on different emotional processing and mindset changes. So anything anybody needs help with, I'm happy to help you out. Thank you all for your time and